Hi everybody, thank you for joining us for Tea and Talk. As you may know, today is World Mental Health Day and the theme this year is mental health for all. Every single person has mental health and our mental health can change and react to the circumstances which we find ourselves in. So everyone's mental health is important, whatever the circumstances are and however life is impacting them. So 4 of the people on this call own and live in buildings which have dangerous cladding or other fire safety issues. Understandably, that has a huge impact on people's mental health. Manchester Cladiators, we recognise the impact that this devastating situation is having on people's mental health. And we've previously run a wellness programme with events such as yoga and mindfulness, which some of you may have attended. And that was in an attempt to just help people deal with the stress and anxiety. So today, as part of that wellness programme and in recognition of World Mental Health Day, we've invited you all for Tea and Talk, which is an event run by the Mental Health Foundation to help raise awareness of mental health. So joining us for Tea and Talk today, we've got Val from The Frame in Manchester. We've got Nathan from Skyline 1 in Manchester. And then we've got Jess and Matt from a building in Liverpool. And they're joining us from our sister campaign group, Liverpool Cladiators. We're also grateful to be joined by George Clark, who's been a big supporter of Manchester Cladiators and the End Our Cladding Scandal campaign. So let's grab our tea and have a talk about mental health. I'll hand over to you, George.
I've got my tea ready. Is that very professional? That's good. Guys, firstly, thanks for doing this. I thought it would just be good to have a very open and honest, probably quite raw conversation about the issues that you guys have been facing. Obviously, this is about World Mental Health Day, so I hope you don't mind me getting a little bit personal with you about the mental impact that the cladding scandal has had on you and your health and your well-being. Obviously, we could probably have a 10-hour conversation about the politics of the scandal and all of that. So I think we kind of, if it's all right with you, if we can kind of stick to the personal effect it's had on you, if you're happy to go there, because as I say, we could probably talk about millions of other issues associated with the scandal, but this very much has to be focused on World Mental Health Day. It's probably right that I just talk for maybe a minute about me. Obviously, I'm an architect and I'm a TV presenter for Channel 4. I've now been labelled a campaigner, which I'll take that as a big compliment, but I wish I didn't have to do it, to be honest. I'm an ambassador for shelter and a lot of homeless charities. I'm passionate about genuinely affordable homes, council housing and social housing, and trying to help those most in need. Unfortunately, I was there the night Grenfell happened. My house is about 80 metres away, 90 metres away. It's one of the closest houses to the tower. I live in the terrace, which is, if you like, between, well, there's an academy between the tower and my house, basically. I thought, if I'm honest, I thought my fire alarms were going off in my house. And it's a house that I just recently refurbished. And I literally kind of jumped out of bed and thought, my fire alarms are going off downstairs. That's how close I was to Grenfell. And went downstairs and realised it wasn't. And went to the front of the house thinking it might be someone else's house. There's more estates, if you like, at the front than at the back. And when I went to the back of the house, because I was kind of following my ears half asleep, I opened the back door and looked up, and the northeast corner of Grenfell Tower was alight from the bottom to the top. And without getting too heavy about it, it was the worst night of my life, if I'm honest. I lost my dad when I was 7. That was pretty bad. But Grenfell was definitely the worst night of my life. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I couldn't believe what I was seeing in the 21st century. I couldn't believe what I was seeing on a building that had just been recently refurbished with money spent on it. I won't get into the rest, but you can imagine the impact it had on the local area and the community and myself. I didn't lose anybody personally in that building, but I know quite a lot of people who did through Grenfell United and other residents in the area. So it's something that I'm staggeringly passionate about. And if it's all right, Val, I'd love to start with you.
Yeah.
I suppose from a health and well-being and a mental health point of view, what impact has this had on you, and what's your current situation?
Well, it's had an enormous impact on me because, as you can see, I'm no longer 20 years old. I'm not in the flush of youth, and I'm past retirement age. And I actually did retire in February from a very demanding, shall we say, NHS job, because I felt I need to stop now. But because of the impact of the cladding and all the cladding issues, I've had to return to work. And I mean, I'm fortunate, I've gone back to the NHS and I'm being well supported, but I'm having to do 4 days a week because the bills that are coming in, the insurance has gone up from 20,000 to 205,000 a year.
For the building, for the overall building? That's
for the building.
Yeah.
Which impacted massively on the service charge. So whereas I'd worked out my outgoings and thought, oh, I can afford to retire, I now can't. And there have obviously been other bills as well. So to come back to my mental health, instead of being able to retire and the little bit of money I have, being able to go and see my children and my grandchildren who live abroad and have the odd holiday and this and that, I'm now frightened to spend. And I think the massive thing is I feel that my life is on hold. Now, when you're 20, 30, that's a really bad thing. And I imagine that the impact on the mental health of younger people is immense, and I'm not diminishing that. But when you're older, you feel, well, I don't have these years to waste. I don't have these years to hang about 5, 10 years for this to be sorted out. So you feel totally trapped. I had a plan. I mean, I'm not foolish. I had a plan for my retirement, which included selling the property, cutting down my overheads, buying somewhere mortgage free, all that type of thing. And I had a nice plan laid out. And then, of course, everything has been totally scuppered, leaving me in this limbo of life where I have no earning capacity. I'm very fortunate the job I do, and the NHS have taken me back, you know, as a bank staff.
Yeah.
Really and truly, I have no earning capacity to be able to pay any bills that are coming. So where do I go from here? And I find that, as Rebecca and I discussed, sometimes I get involved, and I will get involved with things like this, and I'll do my bit on Twitter and campaigning. But then I can only do so much, and to protect myself and my own mental health, I then have to step back because I can only take so much of the stress, plus try and work as well.
So you have to make a conscious decision to try and mentally disassociate yourself from it because it's a burden on you.
Yeah, very much so, because there's so much stress involved, and we don't want to get into politics because that's not what this is about. But a lot of people, unless they're directly involved in it, don't understand the complexities. It's become very complex. It's become very difficult to navigate everything. The amounts of money that are being quoted per apartment now are just staggering for the normal person. Where do we expect to find it from? Particularly
and what figure have you been told, Val? Sorry to interrupt. What figure have you been quoted?
Well, anything from 30 to 40,000 per apartment.
My God.
And bear in mind, that's bad enough for somebody who's younger, who has earning capacity. But when you get past retirement, where is one expected to find this money from?
And Val, there's obviously the financial pressure, which you've made super, super clear. And that must be an awful thing to live with at any age, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
What about the fear of being in a building that isn't safe?
Well, I suppose really I'm going to be a little bit controversial here. There is a fear of that. And there are things that need remedying here, without a doubt. But I live in a block which is well maintained and well managed. So I feel that some of the pressure we're being put under, some of the stresses and strains on my mental health are to some extent unnecessary if one looks in a common sense point of view.
In what way? No, I'm just trying. When you say you're gonna say something a bit controversial or against the time, what do you mean?
Because I mean, Grenfell, we can't sort of say enough how tragic and how dreadful that was, and something needs doing about that and that type of cladding. And I totally, utterly agree with that. And I would put 100% of my energies into anything that would help the people from Grenfell and similar apartment blocks. Here we have cedar cladding. We're below 18 metres, but we're still subject to all of this that's going on. So that in itself is a big worry. It's a big frustration, because you think, well, can't somebody look at this commonsensically? That yes, it's all wrong. Yes, it needs putting right, but you can't minimise every risk, can you? You can't legislate against every risk. You can only do your best and put in place measures to minimise that risk, which I feel has been done here, and we're still stuck in this situation, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Val, when do you think you're going to retire now?
Well, I can't see it at the moment. I mean, I've been given work until the end of the year. But fortunately, with what I do, I get texts and emails every week asking me if I want work. And I'm thinking now, maybe I should go back and maybe I should just keep working, because I can't see an end to it.
That's awful, isn't it? I mean, that's awful for you. You wanted to live life. I mean, you live life anyway, obviously, but you know, you wanted to retire and enjoy it after you've worked so hard for so many years.
Yeah. And I mean, I have grandchildren in Cambodia. That's not a cheap trip. It's not jumping across the channel. And I'm thinking, shall I spend that money and go and see them? Can I afford to spend that money? Maybe I'm going to need it for the next bill that comes in for cladding.
How much does it, you painted the picture brilliantly about that kind of big picture stress and that financial worry. What kind of mental, possibly even physical effects is that having on you in more detail? Like, are you sleeping at night? Do you know what I mean? This is an example.
I mean,
on a day-to-day, what's happening?
I have quite a few nights when I don't sleep, and you're thinking about it, and you're thinking about the future and what can I do and how can I work this out, how can I work that out. You're constantly, I suppose for want of a better word, you're constantly ruminating on it and scheming, thinking, well, how can I get out of this situation? But at the moment, what is the get out? Apart from giving the place away, what is the get out? And I've worked all my life. I've worked from the age of 15. I'm now past retirement age. And I can't just settle back and say, well, okay, I'll go and see my grandchildren. So it's a massive...
You obviously feel trapped.
Yes, very trapped. And it takes...
You feel angry? You feel angry as well, Bob?
Yeah, it takes away the enjoyment of the nice little apartment they've got. Because I've enjoyed apartment living. But, you know, we have periods in our life, don't we, where one thing suits, then another thing suits, and so on. I think my period of apartment living has now come to an end, and I want to move on and I want to do other things. And then you feel totally trapped, because I can't, through no fault of my own. I'm totally trapped, and I could end up absolutely penniless.
And that's devastating on every level.
Yeah.
Every level. Val, I'm just going to go to Nathan, if that's all right, and then we can maybe have a chat between us. Is that okay? Nathan, how are you doing, mate?
Yeah, so much resonates there from what Val said. There's so many aspects that I think are common amongst many of us leaseholders. who are
Can you tell me
experienced.
what your story is first, Nathan? Sorry to jump in, but just like what yours, because Val's painted that picture about retirement and work and the financial pressure. What's your situation?
Well, about 19 months ago, 100 of our leaseholders were contacted to be made aware that we've got high pressure laminate and other issues going on with our building. After months of uncertainty, the costs were clarified, and in my case, it was nearly £19,000. Some of the other leaseholders were £31,000. And this is a huge cost for me and my partner, Adam. It's prevented us from being able to buy a home, potentially get married. It's been a constant feature in our lives, and it's really aggravated my pre-existing medical conditions. More recently, to make matters even worse, and it's been a really crappy day, I'm going through a redundancy, and I just found out that my appeal failed today. So I'm feeling pretty crap today. We thought the building safety fund in relation to the actual cladding was going to be light at the end of the tunnel for the leaseholders here at Skyline. But after waiting for and finally reading through the guidance, we discovered that blocks that had started work before March weren't eligible. Yep. So the government, after lots of discussions around ACM and making sure that the leaseholders shouldn't have to pay for remediation works, they set up the building fund, which is excellent, and I'm really glad they did that. But they put a caveat in saying that any buildings who had started work or had planned work prior to the announcement in the budget would be ineligible to apply. All the other conditions we met, so we were above 18 metres, we had issues with our cladding that were covered. You know, we were stuck. We didn't have the cash to pay up. The freeholder was adamant that it needed doing, and we accepted that we were living in a very dangerous building, and the works went ahead, and then all of a sudden they announced the building fund. We found out that we're not eligible, which made us furious, you can imagine. But you know what? We grouped together, and thankfully, with the support of the freeholder, the managing agent, and most of all the Cladiators, we fundraised, mobilised everyone, and brought a judicial review case against the government. Now,
Nathan, I'm just going to interrupt you, right? Because I'm conscious that we're talking about big picture stuff, and we're not talking about you.
Yeah.
And I know you've had a terrible day, and it's probably really, really hard for you to talk about this. But the reason why I want to do it is because this is about your story, not in terms of politics and everything else, but about where your head's at, like how you feel, what impact is this having on you day to day. And I know it's going to be tricky for you to talk about, I can tell already, because you've had a shit day. Sorry, I probably shouldn't swear on that video that we're going to post, but whatever. If you can, and if you're happy to do it, just tell me where your head's at and what impact this has had on you. Not everybody else, not even your partner, just on you.
Sorry, I'm getting even choked up thinking about it. It's been a daily drag. It's a constant fear, anxiety, upset, stress, anger. Just the unjust nature of everything about it just is eating me up inside, feeling so powerless, and it, you know, completely and utterly, I feel like I'm impotent. I can't do anything. Everything I do just doesn't seem to work. We live in a building, I live in, it's hard to call it home because it doesn't feel like that. It feels more like a prison, really, in the sense that, like Val said, we can't get out of it. We bought it in really good faith. We loved the apartment when we saw it. It was a beautiful, beautiful apartment, a fantastic location. And then to be told that it's actually worthless. And like Val said, it's never ending. It's not just the cladding. Then we find out about EWS1 forms, and I share what Val was saying about where does it end? What next? Because then there's compartmentation works. When is it going to end? When are we going to be able to say, you know, we can sell the building, or we're living in a safe building, or the risks that are there have been analysed, and they are reasonably covered, because like Val, you know, I don't want anything to happen, and like any fire is tragic and any loss of life is unacceptable, but there has to be a limit. There has to be, you know, you can't completely and utterly future-proof everything.
Let's come back to you, because you're
Yeah.
going up on policy again. How's it
I know.
affecting? No, and fair enough. How's it affecting you day to day? Like, I used to the examples of Val. Is she sleep? You know, are you sleeping well? Are you not? Are you?
Yeah.
Is it affecting? I don't know. Is it affecting your work? You've just been made redundant, but is it affecting? I don't know, how you think or how you socialize or how you talk to your family, or just on a very simple level. And I know it sounds complicated, but what effect is it having on you directly?
It's changed me as a person. I used to be really confident and outgoing and social, and it kind of has consumed me. The last 18 months has changed me as a person, and I'm kind of I'm unable to have that proper relationship with my partner, because I spend most of my time trying to fight battles because of it. So that has a huge effect on both me emotionally and my relationship. Same with the family. My family, I would see sort of at least once a week, and that kind of has phased out, because again, I've been sort of just not wanting to. I've not felt like doing it. I've just been fed up.
How would you opened that up by saying I used to be quite confident and like socializing, and how would you describe yourself now in similar types of words, if you know what I mean?
Almost reclusive, certainly so short-tempered.
Yeah, well, because you're angry, because you're
Yeah.
okay, and
Yeah.
that's coming out day to day. Is that coming out in
All the
commonplace?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And it's horrible, because I've become a person that I don't like, and that's not okay. You know, I used to be funny and have a great sense of humor, and I kind of almost feel like that's been taken away, which is really sad as well.
And do you think you're depressed?
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
You didn't think twice about that answer, did you?
No.
And you weren't before?
No. But yeah, it's all powerful stuff.
It certainly is. It certainly is. Well, thanks for telling your story, mate. I'm really, really grateful. And I'm sorry about you losing your appeal and your redundancy as well. That
Appreciate
just
that.
takes it to another level, doesn't it? But I know it's probably easy for me to say on the other end of a phone, but try and stay strong.
Thank you.
And you should. And we talk about tea and talk. Just it really is good to talk. I know that might sound like a cliched phrase, but you know, just remember you've got people around that care.
Thank you. That means a lot.
I mean it though. I really mean it. You know, it's there's a lot of people that do care. So just don't become reclusive. Don't, because we're all angry. I'm not even living in the place where you're living, and I'm king angry. I was going to put a beep in myself there to get over my swear words.
Yeah.
So what you're going through is hell, basically. But honestly, we'll get through it, and don't go into yourself too much. Just keep talking, okay?
Thank you. I will.
Jess and Matt.
Hi.
Hi. What's your story? Come on.
So, obviously, I just wanted to obviously say that we're sort of here with everyone, and particularly Nathan, obviously, sort of hearing your story, we just wanted to express, obviously, we're all in the same situation, and we just want to know that, obviously, we're here for you, and I think it's important that we all look after each other in this together. So
I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more.
Yes. So we're two junior doctors. we bought our flat maybe just over 2 years ago. We rented about 12 months beforehand in exactly the same building. We both loved it. We looked around for other places, and it was perfect for us. So we moved it 2 doors down.
The corridor.
Straight down the corridor. We loved the place. You know, we made it our home. It was sort of perfect what it was. And then, how long ago now? January. We got it was just a letter under the door, just saying, sorry, your building's a fire hazard. So obviously we're in exactly the same position now, where our flat's worth nothing. As part of our training, we were planning to move up to the northeast. So we've come to sort of a natural point where we can sort of now almost uproot and move up to Newcastle, where Jess's family are.
You don't want to move to Newcastle, move to Sunderland instead. It's cheaper. It's much cheaper in Sunderland.
It is.
You know what? My house phone's going off and I've just ignored everything that Rebecca said. Let me just hang up on it. Hang on.
No, of course.
Hang on. Rebecca's going to kill me for that. Yeah. Sorry, Rebecca. I won't do it again.
What's the house phone?
I was thinking that. What's a house phone?
Do you know what? It's because I now live in the countryside and people use these things. Seriously, I've not had a house phone for years and years.
You even got a little clip on the back. You can clip into the trousers.
It's all that, yeah. Look at that.
Is that thing steam powered?
Stop it. Anyway, come on. We've got more serious things to talk about. More serious. So go on, you're going to move to the northeast, unfortunately, to Newcastle. But
yes, that's right. So we're obviously we're now at the point in our lives. We were looking to get married. We were looking to have kids, and we wanted to move closer to Jess's family for that to happen. But obviously, of course, now we're essentially left in this point where we're stuck in limbo, unable to move, we're unable to sell. We don't have the money to sort of cover the costs of the cladding bill, which we're looking about 18,000. Let alone thinking about deposits for bigger places, making it more child accommodating. So
Matt, I'm just going to jump in a little bit, because I think you've touched on all the terrible but consistent themes that Val and Nathan have talked about, in effect being trapped in the financial burden and worry about that. Mm-hmm. But I want to really get to that core of the mental health issues and what effect individually and separately, if you like, it's had on the two of you.
Yeah.
And I want the brutal truth, and you're both doctors, so I know you're probably very trained in how to describe how you feel. But I think let's forget about you being doctors for a minute and the professional side. Just as wonderful people, how is it making you feel? What impact do you think it's having on your mental health and well-being?
Yeah. I'm very anxious. I think, everybody has mental health and everybody has tendencies, and I would say that I'm an anxious person, but that's not a problem. I'm a perfectionist, you could say. But this has tipped the balance into not being a perfectionist, being anxious and having anxiety and worrying all the time, going to bed.
And what impact does that anxiety have on you? Like, how's it affecting you compared to what it was like before?
Yeah. Some nights I don't sleep. I definitely do ruminate about, what can we do? What's going to happen? When are we going to get out of here? What's the next step in our lives? It can make me quite short-tempered, probably, but when there's something in the back of your mind all the time, and it's horrible, and it's there, and it's reminding you, and then somebody says something else, and you're snappy and you're short-tempered. We partly probably we've come together a bit over it, and it's been one of the bigger challenges that we've faced as a couple. This was like our first property together, and it was exciting at the time, but we have pulled together. But it's hard. It's hard to support each other, and we both feel like we're going through the same thing. But then obviously at times it pulls you apart as well. You know, you're thinking one way and he's thinking the other, and it's just arguments as well.
I was just about to say, do you row about it? Do you argue about it?
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think every time we get a quiet moment together, instead of, you know, sitting down with a glass of wine and a movie, we start ruminating over cladding, and we just end up talking about it for hours on end. And it essentially just eats up all the free time you have, because we're constantly thinking about what our next steps are. We're even sort of planning our fire escape routes to see, you know, sort of, we know our balcony, for example, is sort of the best chance of escape we've got. So we talk about buying ropes to abseil down there in case we have a fire. And it just ends up...
What floor are you on?
So we're on the 4th floor. So abseilable.
Which we've decided isn't so bad compared to some, but that's something you have to think about.
It's still high.
It's heartbreaking on seeing the effect that it has on who you're living with as well. I mean, Jess is saying that she has sleepless nights, and you know, there's times where I wake up and I can see her sort of tossing, turning, grinding her teeth, and it's heartbreaking. The whole point of being together and wanting to commit to marry each other is that you want to look after them and take care of them, and it's devastating to not be able to give any sort of help as much as you want to. You just can't, and all you have to do is just sit there and say, I know.
Yeah. And it's where you as well, you know, you come home and work's stressful, obviously, and work's more stressful right now. But you come home from work and you think, oh, I'm home. And then even if there was a second where you could get it out of your mind, you look around and you think, oh God, the flat. Oh God.
Yeah. Well, the phrase that I use an awful lot, I think it's probably the 3 most essential things, is having a safe, secure and stable home. It's like the 3 S's of home life. If you feel safe there, that's wonderful. If you feel secure there, that means hopefully you're financially stable, and that gives you, you know, peace of mind, if you like, that you can stay there and enjoy it and afford it. And if you haven't got those things, it's not stable. And stability in life, as you know, as all of you guys know, is unbelievably important. Matt, we haven't really talked about you. You've been lovely in talking about Jess and that you're worried about her. But what about you?
So I've struggled with my mental health sort of before all of this.
Have you? Do you mind talking about that just for a few seconds?
Absolutely. It's very hard, I think, talking about depression and admitting it. I think it's very hard to put a finger on what it was that made me like that, whether it was work, whether it was my sort of background and my childhood. But yeah, and I was just starting to get to the point where actually things were getting better. Obviously, Jess has been an absolute rock in that, but you know, things were improving. We were sort of moving forwards. I was starting to feel, you know, a bit more stable and happy in myself. And well, this happens, and I wouldn't say I'm back to square one as such, but it certainly knocks you down a fair few pegs, especially
when did you realize that you were suffering from depression and that you felt different?
Well, I think as in terms of sort of around this sort of area, or do you mean?
No, before that.
Generally, it was around university. I think my parents had a fairly difficult breakup, and my mum was suffering a lot with her mental health at the time, and I think I was probably her rock. And especially coming from where I do, obviously I'm almost trained to be a caring person, and that's why I go into what I do. You ignore yourself, you ignore your own feelings, and you put those you care about before you. and you don't necessarily realize how much of an effect that has on you until, so my mum's now much better, and then all of a sudden I realized, well, actually I'm in the same position, but I just completely ignored it, just let it eat away slowly in the background. It probably had an effect on us. It's, you know, had effect on friendships and me not wanting to go out and things like that. Yeah, it's,
and then this comes along.
I mean, it almost gets to the point of, especially when you're already suffering with mental health issues, that it almost becomes expected. You know, you expect these sort of things to, once it comes along, you're like, well, of course. And it almost,
is that what you think? Is that what you think? So you're in a kind of resigned position that you just think, oh well, this is going to happen to me. It's like, just, that's another thing.
It almost turns to apathy. Sort of this sort of, it comes under the door and you just say, well, great, I'll just add that to the pile.
Jess, what's it like for you? I think Matt, you know, spoke really beautifully actually about how much he cares about you. How does it affect you seeing him go through this?
Yeah. He was in a really great place before this started, and he still is. He puts himself down. He does very, very well. But he doesn't. Do you know what I mean? You hate to see someone who you love and then they're doing really well and everything's going well at work. Everything's going well. You know, we're about to get married if it wasn't for COVID, but you know, we're still happy there. And then something that's completely out of your control just comes and knocks him down. And you just think, how dare that happen? What can I do? Let me stand up. Let me fight that. And then there's nothing you can do. And then, so that's why I lie awake thinking, what can I do? What can I do? And it's, you know, you're protecting each other. And then that's probably, I don't know how helpful it is, because it just feels like we're both fighting for each other, but we're not getting anywhere. And there's not, most of it's out of our control. But what else can you do? You know, nobody else is going to stand up for him.
Yeah, but I think, listen, I'm not a therapist, not by any stretch of the imagination, but as awful as all this is, and it is horrendous, I'm not even going to try and diminish how horrendous it is. You've got each other. You've got your physical health, good. Your mental health might be being hit by it, and I know how tough that is. But again, when I kind of said it to Nathan, really, and I didn't really say it to Val, but I should have done, is that you've got a massive amount of support around you. Huge amount of support, huge amount. You know, even beyond residents who are directly affected, like you are, in communities that are affected. You know, there's myself, and I could count hundreds and hundreds of people in this industry and beyond who are behind you to support you. So don't let it beat you. I know it's hard, but don't let it drag you down. And collectively, we'll get it sorted out. We have to. We absolutely have to. And listen, thanks to all three of you, well, four of you, sorry, three groups, four of you, sorry, Jess and Matt, all four of you for taking the time out to tell your story. Having a cup of tea and a talk's no bad thing, is it, really, sometimes? And I just hope that lots of people watch this and realise that there's some wonderful people out there being put in a very difficult position that's beyond their control, and that all of us in our millions have to support you to try and solve that problem. And I think you've been staggeringly brave to talk to a complete stranger, because you've never met before, talk to a complete stranger about what situation you're in. And you've certainly got my help and support every single step of the way until this is sorted out, for what it's worth. But thanks for taking the time on World Mental Health Day to tell your story. And we are all here to help and support you. You're not on your own.
Just to echo what George has said, you know, I just listening to you all, it's just heartbreaking. And I wish, you know, I wish it was just a few of you. There's thousands and thousands of people in this position. So thank you all for your honesty. And it is, Josh used the word brave. You are very brave for having this conversation with us. So, so thank you so much. And, it just drives me and, all the other supporters and campaigners to just keep going until we can, make sure that, your homes are safe and, at no cost to you, because none of you are at fault for what's happened. We've asked government for 10 things recently in our campaign relaunch, along with the other campaign groups, and one of those is that we want to ensure that there is mental health support for all the residents in this position. But obviously, we are here to provide you with any links to support in your local area, and please just pick up the phone, just message us. We all understand what it's like to be in that position, and we're all here, so please never feel alone. So I'm getting upset now. So thank you very much for joining us for Tea and Talk, and yeah, it's always good to
I'm completely in bits. I'm in the right state. Nathan got me going, and then Matt's just added to it. So, but I'm not going to sit in the dark room. I'm going to take some positivity out of this, and if you like, it's pushed me even further, really, to realise that this just isn't right. But
agreed.
With all the powers that be who aren't doing the right thing, I think you're amazing people. You're very, very strong people. So let's keep pushing.